Okay. Hello, can anyone hear me? Perfect. Hello. Not sure if you can hear the background noise, but we have some jets flying overhead because my house is in the flight path. So apologize in advance for that, but nothing I can do about the background noise on that one. Hello, Trina from Petawawa. We like the sound of jets. Yeah, it was a little quiet for a while, so it's nice to hear them back. So. Good morning. So good morning to those that are on the west side of Canada. Good afternoon, I guess, to those on the east coast. So it is morning for me here. Hello from Ottawa. Perfect. Okay, so we're probably going to have some people still joining in, but because my time says 11:01, I am going to get started. And if they happen to, pop in, that's awesome. If not, then we have a great group as it is. Still getting some great mornings. Good. Hello. Seem to have people from all over Canada, which is fantastic. Okay, so before we're going to get started, I just need to go over a few things just because this is a national live webinar. And I will say that this is my first one being national. I've done a few in very tiny groups for Cold Lake, but just be nice to me because it is the first time. All right, so you'll see I'm looking at a few different screens. I have 3 screens going on right now, so computer's here, but I've got a couple others, so just bear with me if I'm not looking directly at the camera. So the presentation you're about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense. Any reproduction or retransmission of the slides contained in this presentation is strictly forbidden. So please make sure that you're not taking these slides and putting them elsewhere. Some of the topics discussed in this webinar may be of sensitive nature, not appropriate for children. We ask for parental discretion. Because this is sleep, it's not necessarily sensitive. However, I'm not really going to be going into anything to do with children, their sleep needs. So if that's kind of what you're looking for, that's not what I'm going to be going into. I'll be really focusing on adult needs. Please understand that people's stories are theirs alone to tell, and anything that is shared by participants in this webinar, either on camera or in the chat, is not to be discussed outside of the webinar, okay? So please just keep that in mind, that if somebody's sharing a story, that it is just to be kept in this, this format. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be available for viewing later on cafconnection.ca. Though active participation is encouraged, you may simply follow along without using the chat and or video microphone functions if you prefer. So I definitely encourage engagement. I think most people get more out of it when they are engaged, but please feel free to just simply listen and follow along if you're more comfortable with that, because it is being recorded. That being said, I am going to keep people's microphones and cams off for right now. If you specifically want yours turned off to ask a question or to share something, please just let me know and I can do that for you. But I also find when we have a lot of mics on, some people forget to mute. There's a lot of background noise and it gets a little convoluted in here. Okay. All right. So moving on here. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about better sleep for better health. The reason we're focusing on sleep is, if you're familiar with it, the new CAF physical performance strategy came out called Balance, and sleep is one of the P4 behaviors. So at Fort Wayne Cold Lake, we've already started really focusing on that, and I know that some of my colleagues across Canada are also doing that as well, which is fantastic. So as I mentioned, I am from Cold Lake. So my name is Lisa Fisher. I'm a health promotion specialist at Fort Wayne Cold Lake. Currently coming to you from my spare bedroom turned into an office. Our team here is really excited to be able to participate in these national webinars. Sound is cutting out. I apologize for that. I will move this a little closer to me and see if that helps. Let me know if there's an issue, okay? All right. So how much sleep do you get per night? So I'm actually going to, ooh, you know what? Before I go into that, there's a couple little polls I wanna do, because I want to see where who we're talking to and kind of where you're from. So first little poll that's going to be here is, which group do you belong to? So I just want you to check that out and let me know if you're from regular reserve, civilian member, veteran, or family member. Perfect. Okay, so we have quite a few military and civilian members, which is fantastic. Got some family members, got a veteran, that's awesome. So really good range here. My other question before we go into the sleep portion is, I want to kind of know where you're joining us from. So keep in mind, I don't have enough poll options to put every province, so I've kind of just divided up here. But you'll see the next one that I'm just kind of asking if you're from Atlantic Canada, Central Canada, Western Canada, Northern Canada, or if you're joining us from an outcan. Okay. All right. So majority is Central Canada and Western Canada is representing right now. Northern Canada has not joined us. OCAN's none of those, and we've got one from Atlantic Canada. So welcome. Good afternoon to the to Central Canada and Atlantic Canada then. All right, perfect. So now let's move on to the sleep portion. So this is the first question I'm going to ask you all. So on average, how much sleep do you get per night? Okay. All right, so fantastic. Majority of our answers are coming actually 7 to 9 hours. Second place would be 5 to 6 hours. A few people less than 5 hours. Nobody has answered so far that they're more than 9. So when we look at how much sleep that you should be getting, this is from the National Sleep Foundation. So the National Sleep Foundation essentially convened a panel of experts to create recommendations for sleep across the lifespan. This was released in 2015, so it is fairly new, which is fantastic. And you'll see in here that when we're looking at military specifically, we're looking about between the ages of 18 to up to that, 60-ish range. So when we look at that, we're the 7 to 9 hours per night, which is fantastic because when I did that poll, a large variety of us are actually doing the 7 to 9 hours per night. You can see there as well that it goes down to 6 and potentially up to 10 to 11, depending on your age. It may be appropriate, but generally it's 7 to 9. I have had people that said, well, I sleep less than 6 and I feel fine and that's what I need and it's perfectly fine. I will say that there is potentially some people that are long sleepers or short sleepers, so they sleep more than 9 hours or they sleep less than 6 and that's what they need. However, it's a very small portion of the population, and generally what I find when people are saying to me, I sleep less than 6 or I sleep 4. I've had a person say, I sleep 4 and I'm great. They generally are actually sleep deprived. The person that had said, I sleep 4 was falling asleep while, doing the presentation. So definitely not well rested if that's the case. That being said, definitely make sure that you're following the guidelines that are appropriate for yourself. So your age, but also how you feel. So it's really important to be in tune with your body. So if you're feeling really refreshed and you're not feeling tired, you have your energy level and everything at 6 hours, that may be appropriate for you. Okay, but if you're not, or you're feeling the need to nap and all of those things, then you might need to be looking at increasing that sleep or looking at the quality of sleep that you're getting. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the sleep stages really briefly. So we categorize sleep into slow wave sleep, so SWS, or which is also called non-REM, or your rapid eye movement REM sleep, which is also called paradoxical. So slow wave can be also broken down into either your light sleep or your deep sleep. So light SWS or deep SWS. And you'll see with this graphic, so when you're awake, your brain waves on the EEG are quite frequent, right? We're doing things, we're active, our brain is active. When you go into light sleep, that is kind of slowing down, but it's still pretty active because our brain is still, not quite there yet. When you go into the deep sleep, you're going to have those large waves because our body is regular. We're in the process of recovery and everything, so it is slowed down. REM sleep, though, you'll see that we are again active in our brain, and that's because REM majority of dreams. Dreams can occur in any stage, but REM specifically, you'll have the more vivid dreams that you're more likely to remember. So that's why our brain is pretty active during that time. So looking at non-REM sleep, or the SWS, or slow wave sleep, you have 3 stages essentially. So they were categorized stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. They've recently changed them to N1, N2, and 3, and then your N4, your REM. So N1 is the time between being awake and falling asleep, essentially. Your awareness is kind of starting to diminish at that point. N2 is when your sleep is actually starting. So this is when your breathing and heart rate are going to become regular. Your body temperature is going to drop. More than half your night is kind of spent in this stage, throughout the night. And it is a relatively light stage of sleep. So you can easily be awoken in this stage. So if you've ever been asleep and been easily awoken, this is likely the stage that you were in. N3 is the deepest and most restorative sleep. I do apologize. I know that my camera is kind of going in and out. Every time I move, it tries to fix my face, apparently. N3 is also when the blood pressure drops, breathing becomes slower, muscles are going to be relaxed in that stage, the blood supply to the muscle increases, tissue growth and repair occurs, energy is restored. This is also when the growth hormone is released, so that's why it's very important for children and adolescents to also get the deep sleep, because they're growing. So that growth hormone is released during that time. And this sleep stage occurs predominantly in the first half of the night during the first 2 sleep cycles. So with your non-REM sleep, or your N1, N2, and N3, you're spending about 75% of your night in these stages. When we go over to REM sleep, this is where it first occurs approximately after the first 90 minutes of sleep, and then it recurs approximately every 90 minutes. So it does increase in length later in the night. So essentially, you're going to potentially experience about 4 to 5 REM episodes per night. The first episode's really, really brief, might last around 10 minutes. And as you continue, the last episode is actually around an hour. So you'll see that in the morning or early morning hours, you're going to get a lot more REM sleep. So it is important that if you're a person that's constantly being awoken in the early morning hours, that you may be disrupting your REM sleep. It does provide energy to the brain and the body, supports your daytime performance. This is when your brain is active and those dreams occur. As I mentioned, as I said, you can have dreams throughout all stages, but with REM sleep, you're going to have more of those vivid dreams. Your eyes are going to dart back and forth. So if you've ever seen a sleeping person in REM, when their eyes are closed, you might see some movement behind their eyelids as their eyes dart back and forth. And this is when your body becomes immobile and your muscles are turned off. So some of you may have had dreams before that you didn't feel like you could actually physically move, and likely because you couldn't, because your muscles were turned off at that point in time. I will mention that sleep architecture, or how we sleep, does vary across the lifespan. So your cycles may differ a bit. However, your sleep needs are very similar when we go from adulthood even into late adulthood. It just goes from 7 to 9 to about 7 to 8. But your sleep architecture does change depending on an individual, but also the age as well. Or if you have a sleep disorder or a sleep-related condition. Somebody who is sleep deprived, their sleep cycles are not going to be the same as somebody who is well rested, okay? So sleep drive. So how do we know we need to go to sleep, essentially? What happens is that when we are awake, we should be able to be very alert, right? And as that day goes on and we get closer to when we should be going to sleep, and we've, depleted our wakefulness reservoir, it's like an hourglass, and essentially our wakefulness reservoir is slowly depleting and going down to the bottom as we go through our day. And when we've depleted that, it needs to be flipped so that it can be filled up again. And so when it's flipped, we have that sleep reservoir. So as we're sleeping, that is now slowly depleting. So then we go into the morning and we flip again. So it's a really easy way to kind of think about how we sleep and wake up. It is called homeostatic pressure if you want to get into the specific terminology, but a lot of people just like the way of looking at it as an hourglass mechanism. Okay. So our views on sleep. A third of Canadians actually sleep fewer than per night then is recommended. When we looked at this poll, we actually had majority of the people that are here sleeping enough, which is fantastic. But we did have some that were sleeping, you know, less than 6. Pulling an all-nighter or voluntarily cutting back on sleep is often viewed as benign. So we think that getting, you know, doing something else instead of sleeping is okay. It's more important to be more productive than to actually sleep. University students, for sure. I know when I was a university student, all-nighters were just kind of par for the course, or that's what I thought, because I didn't have enough time. Essentially, I didn't manage my time. But, you know, you have these all-nighters so that you can be productive, and then you really struggle the next day. And of course, if this is a chronic thing, then you're going to struggle chronically. Boot camp has all-nighters. Yeah, so even in the military, you potentially are going to have all-nighters. I know I've definitely met military people who have gone out into the field, been awake all night, been awake for multiple days. That can be really, really taxing on the body. We often think that if we, you know, we reduce our sleep, if we sleep less, then it's okay, because all we're going to do is be a little tired in the next morning. But I'm going to show you how sleep deprivation can actually affect us both in the short term and in the long term. So sleeping is important. It is a fundamental part of our health. So we know nutrition is important. We know exercise is important. And sleep, we're like, we'll do it when we can, but it's a waste of time, is what a lot of people will say to me. It's not. It's incredibly important. It conserves our energy and our fuels it daily so that we can wake up and actually be productive and be active. It does help us memorize and learn. So when we're asleep, our neurons are consolidating those memories and storing those memories so that we can learn from them. So essentially, think of if you've gone to a class or a course for a day, and then you don't sleep well, but it's a 2-day course. So the next day you're going to go back to that course and you have a test. Well, if you haven't slept well, you might not do very well on that test because you're struggling to remember the things that you learned the day before. So it is very fundamental for learning. It is important for emotion and stress management. So, you know, we're more likely to be emotional when we're sleep deprived. We're more likely to be irritable, cranky, snappy, more likely to have difficulty with stress. So essentially, stress is a reason that we can potentially be kept awake, but then we don't, because of stress, we don't sleep well. And then we wake up and we're more stressed, and it just ends up in this vicious cycle. It helps to preserve the immune system. So right now, especially because of everything that is going on with COVID-19, having a good immune system is imperative. It does assist in helping that immune system, you know, stay healthy. If you're not sleeping well, you're more likely to get sick more often. And when you get sick, you're more likely to take longer to get better. So if person A is sleeping really, really well, you know, let's say they're sleeping 8 hours of quality sleep, and then person B is sleeping 4 or 5 hours, broken up sleep, not great. Person A and person B both get a cold. Person A is more likely to get better pretty quickly. Person B might still be struggling for a while, you know, based on the fact that they're an otherwise healthy individual with no underlying conditions, okay? It helps to regulate almost all functions in your body. So your brain, your heart, your lung activity, your metabolism, all of those functions are helped by sleep. So when your sleep is out of you know, wonk, then so is your other functions. It also removes metabolic waste produced during the day while you're sleeping. So it flushes your brain out, cleans it out, makes sure that you're ready for the next day. So when we are sleep deprived, as I mentioned, it does affect our mood. Not sure if anybody here knows when they're tired that they are a little bit more moody, whatever that might come out as, more likely to cry more often maybe, more likely to get angry easily. I know with me, I get pretty cranky when I don't sleep. So that people know when I haven't slept well, because my patience is gone and I'm a little cranky. Increases pain perception. So this is, yeah, so somebody says they get very cranky. Increases pain perception. So essentially, if you're more likely to feel pain, or to feel pain to a greater extent. And this can be very concerning for somebody who already has a chronic pain issue. It can really exacerbate that condition. As I mentioned, it's really important for memory, so it can hinder your memory consolidation, which means that you could be inattentive the next day. Okay, so some people are agreeing definitely for what we're talking about for sure. Can exacerbate existing health conditions. So if you have an underlying health condition, when you don't sleep well, it could be, exacerbating that, whether it be physical or mental health. Either or could be exacerbated by lack of sleep. Can't focus if you don't sleep well. Yeah. Create ripple effects on other pillars of health. So what that means is essentially, if you aren't sleeping well, you don't have much energy. So you're more than likely not going to want to go to the gym or go for a run or go work out on your own. And that leads to lack of physical activity, physical activity is incredibly important for health, right? It also means that we potentially might not want to eat well. I'll go into, how the hormones are affected and how that affects our eating, but even the lack of energy, not wanting to prepare a meal, right? All of those things can kind of come into play. And then, of course, cumulative effects plus the accumulation of stress and inability to manage emotion could lead to insomnia problems. So not necessarily an insomnia disorder, but insomnia symptoms. So right now it could be potentially a very stressful time for you, or for people that you know. And that, plus, of course, not sleeping well, it just creates this situation that's not great. So we don't really want to end up in that situation if at all possible. And if you are in that situation right now, that's okay. The first step is to understanding that you are, right? And then we can look at how to fix that or to assist that. And we will be looking at options for sleep, assisting your sleep hygiene. So I'm just going to give you a little idea of how sleep deprivation impacts us from just a few days to if it's chronic. So after a few nights of sleep deprivation, yawning, fatigue, headaches, those are regular things we probably all feel. You're going to end up with severe fatigue and headaches. So if you've ever, felt a little tired in the morning, okay. If you've been sleep deprived and let's say you're trying to pay attention somewhere, but your brain's trying to shut off and you're trying to fall asleep, that can be very dangerous because it's one thing to happen, let's say, in a course where you're safe sitting at a table. It's another thing where you're working on machinery or, for Cold Lake, if you're working on jets, or if you're driving. Those can be really, really dangerous scenarios. Sleepiness, so you can have severe daytime sleepiness with sleep attacks, so you have microsleeps. Reduced immune function after a while can lead to increased risk of cancer. After a few nights, decreased cell regeneration of hair skin cells, not a big deal until it's a little while, right? And then your potentially premature aging of your hair and your skin. Also decreased sperm count for males as well. Irritability, lack of patience, increased stress, and lower sex drive after a few nights. After a while, that's going to be increased risk of anxiety, depression, and burnout. And then difficulty focusing and staying attentive, forgetfulness. After a while, that could lead to attention deficit or memory loss. So we definitely want to nip it in the bud and not let it get to that chronic stage if possible. Overall, if we are sleep deprived, we have increased mortality, whether it's because we're of issues with our body or because we're at more risk for accidents. Drowsy driving is a huge concern and does lead to quite a few accidents across Canada. Okay. So how can sleep deprivation lead to weight gain? Okay. So when we're sleep deprived, essentially what happens is there's 3 different ways that it can lead to weight gain. So our hormones, it's going to increase our hunger through our hormones because essentially there are 2 hormones that have to do with hunger. Ghrelin, which stimulates our appetite, so it tells us, hey, we're hungry, and leptin, which decreases our appetite and says, hey, you're full, you're good. So what happens when we're sleep deprived is the leptin, or the feeling of, hey, we're full, that gets decreased. So now our body or brain is not saying, hey, we're full, it's saying, hey, we're hungry a lot, all the time, right? So that's not quite good. Then we have the hedonic, which is essentially where we want foods that make us feel better. So that's where we start craving foods that are high sugar, high fat, right? And it's kind of the same as with stress. So with sleep deprived, you want foods that make us feel better, so our comfort foods. And what happens is when you eat those, they do make you feel better, right? So then we're going, oh, they made us feel better, so we want them again, because that was the reward. We craved them, it made us feel better, we want it again, right? So instead of going and being like, oh, I want a snack, let's have a few crackers, or let's have, some carrot sticks, we're going, let's have the chips, let's have the ice cream, that's what we need right now. And physical activity, which I already mentioned, we're tired, we're less likely to be physically active, and so therefore we're more likely to skip on that gym time. Right now, especially, it's important if you're somebody that used to just go to the gym and relied on that, and you're not able to go to the gym now, you need to find other ways to be active at your home. So whether that be, you know, finding some things to do in the basement, whether you have some you know, equipment at home, or you have to do some body weight exercises, going for a run if it's nice out. It's finally warming up here. I think it's 5 degrees. So there's hope in the future that I can go for a run. I don't do well with the cold, so I haven't gone out yet. All right. So why do we not get enough sleep? Sorry, I'm going to move back. I'm actually going to ask you guys a poll question first, if my mouse works. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, what is one of the main reasons that you struggle to get enough sleep? And I do understand that there's not all of them there, so that's why there's an other option, because we can explore what that is. Okay. Most people have answered by now. So overall, it's going to be stress, it seems. So quite a few people have also said other. We have 8 people that have said other. Do you want to put in the chat box other reasons that you may not be sleeping well? If you want to share, don't feel like you have to, but I'd like to open that up. Second wind after supper. Okay. Can't turn off my brain. All of the above, yeah. That's fair. Knee injuries. Tammy said, oh, maybe too much Diet Coke. Husband gets up through the night. Very light sleeper. Restless legs. Yeah, so quite a few different reasons as to why we might not be getting enough sleep. Hard to fall asleep overall, yeah. So when we look at why we don't get enough sleep, there's so many reasons. Blue screen Netflix. Yeah, we're going to be talking about technology and sleep in a bit. So here's some reasons why we don't get enough sleep. Sorry. There we go. All right. So we take sleep for granted is one of them, because we don't realize how important sleep is. We think it's a waste of time, so therefore we don't need to sleep. We've probably all heard the whole "we'll sleep when we're dead" thing. Not a really good motto to live your life by. We definitely need that sleep. Too much caffeine, alcohol, or sleeping medicines. So one person actually mentioned that potentially could be Diet Coke because there's caffeine in there. So caffeine prevents you from sleeping well, and alcohol may make you drowsy, but your sleep's going to be restless. So we're going to go over those a little bit more in detail when we get to the sleep hygiene portions. Sleeping medications, I mean, those can be okay every once in a while, of course, under direction with your healthcare professional. However, if you use them regularly and you're not trying to assist with your sleep hygiene, then you could become dependent, develop a tolerance, potentially become addicted to them. I will also caution, if you need to use something to help you fall asleep, you really need to be talking to your healthcare professional. Don't go use something for sleep that is not necessarily supposed to be used for that. I know I've been behind people in the supermarket line, and they said, oh, great, Gravol, I'm going to grab it. I mean, I don't really use it for nausea, I use it for sleep. Well, Gravel's not supposed to be used for sleep. It definitely makes you drowsy, or it can, depending on the person, but we're not using it for the appropriate reasons. We have to be aware of that. Family dynamics. So for anybody who has children, especially younger children, if you have infants, they may, of course, be waking you up throughout the night. Also, anybody, even if I've had people who've said, you know, I had teenagers or young adults, but I worry about them, so that's what makes me stay awake at night. Or if they're out, then I'm worried until they get back into the house. So all of those reasons. Social commitments, so we want to go be social. I mean, right now we're not really going out and physically being social, I would hope. We shouldn't be, but sometimes that comes in the way of sleep. Shift work. So shift work is a huge issue for some people because it really disrupts your circadian rhythm. Essentially, it's telling you you need to be awake when your body's saying you should be sleeping. So shift work in itself is a really specific group of people that have specific issues. Jet lag. So we're not traveling right now, but if you are or have been, you may notice that when you cross different time zones, you get really tired. It does take normally a few days to get used to it, depending on how many time zones you've kind of gone for. Eastward flights specifically, you're going to have sleep disturbances in the first half of the night, difficulty awakening and fatigue in the morning and early afternoon. When you go west, you're going to have poor sleep quality in the later half of the night, early morning awakening and fatigue in the early morning afternoon. So for me, I'm actually from Nova Scotia, so when I fly home, I don't want to wake up in the morning because to me it's 3 hours before and I don't like it. So I actually do red-eye flights normally because I try to sleep on the plane, go to sleep for a few hours when I get in there as a nap, and then and then I kind of try to function as well as possible for the next few days. So to get the most out of my trip, but it can be really, really difficult. Eating and drinking too late. So I will go into what we should and shouldn't be eating in a bit. Failing to wind down, so getting a sleep hygiene routine, which we'll talk about. Stress, of course, if you are having a lot of stress, which I see that a lot of people were that was the reason. We need to learn some stress management techniques to cope with that so that we are not letting it affect our sleep or other areas of life. Sleep disorders, if you do have a sleep disorder, such as sleep apnea, restless legs, insomnia, narcolepsy, any of those types of things, it could be disrupting your sleep. Definitely be talking to your healthcare practitioner about that. If you are concerned that you might have a sleep disorder, that's also a question you should be talking to your healthcare practitioner about. I am not one of those, so I can't tell you if you have one or not. That's not part of my scope of practice. Other medical conditions or pregnancies, so any other medical condition could potentially affect your sleep. Pregnancy, of course, can affect your sleep, especially in the third trimester. If you're not sleeping well, though, while you're pregnant, talk to your healthcare professional because it's not, yes, it's normal for some sleep disturbance, but it's not okay to not be sleeping at all, okay? A lot of women, I think, had the expectation that their sleep is supposed to be horrible while they're pregnant. That's not the case. So definitely have a conversation if that's for describing you or your partner or somebody that you know. Drug side effects as well. So you need to make sure that the medications that you're taking, they might be affecting your sleep. However, you may need to stay on those medications. So talking to your healthcare practitioner about what other things you can do to help assist with your sleep if you have to stay on that medication. Please read the instructions on over-the-counter medications and prescription medications to know if it's going to affect your sleep and what time of day you should be taking it. For example, I have a headache medication that has caffeine in it, and the first time I took it in the evening. Guess who didn't fall asleep till 2 in the morning, right? Because I didn't consider it, and now I definitely don't take it after 3 p.m. If that's my cutoff for that medication if I need it. Otherwise, I have to just go with something that doesn't have a caffeine in it. I do want to also mention with the family dynamics thing, a couple people said, your husband gets up, or so your partner might be getting up, your partner might be coming in late because they do shift work. That can be really disruptive. It really is going to have to deal with kind of conversations with your partner about that. I advocate definitely for time together, but if you do have the option of a spare bed, so that if the other person is being very, very restless and they're struggling to sleep, maybe they should sleep in the spare bed just for that night. Or if they're coming in really late on a late night shift, to go sleep in the spare bed just so that they're not disrupting you and you're not disrupting them when you wake up in the morning. It's really a give and take with that, if that is an option for you. Okay, moving on here. So how to prioritize your sleep and and increase your sleep hygiene. Chantal, can you record it so your husband has to sleep in the spare room? It will be available as a recording, so you can show it to him after if you'd like. I'm not saying they have to. I'm just saying it could be a conversation that you could have together. I do know that with my spouse, he does work shift work sometimes, and sometimes he's more restless than me. So yes, he does sleep in the spare room sometimes, and that's perfectly fine. So sleep hygiene is when we're looking at a variety of different practices and habits that are necessary to have a good nighttime sleep quality and full daytime alertness. So that's what we mean by sleep hygiene, because you probably heard the term thrown around a lot, but we didn't quite know what it meant. So, sorry, I don't have room on my my desk for my water. So, all right. So, first is respecting a regular sleep-wake schedule. Who here goes to bed and wakes up at the same time, plus or minus 30 minutes every day, including weekends? Anybody? There's no poll for this one. Still no, I do never. Yes, yes, no. No, no. Not a chance. Okay, so we've got some yeses. We've got some nos. I will say I struggle with this a little bit on the weekends. I really like sleeping in the morning. I'm not a morning bird. I'm a night owl for sure. So I like sleeping in the morning, but it's definitely something I'm working on. It's also really important right now because a lot of us are working from home, or we've been sent home and waiting to be called in, to kind of try to keep a regular schedule instead of going kind of all over the place because we're home, it's not a big deal. But eventually, if you do get called into work, or when we do get back to a regular work schedule, your body is going to be very unhappy that you were sleeping, different hours every night, waking up at different times, going to sleep at different times. You're going to try that first week of having to wake up at the same time early, and your body's not going to be happy potentially. Okay, so Michael, I'm a morning bird and my wife likes sleeping in. So yeah, that can be a little difficult too when your sleep types are different as well. So we do respond well to routine. So remember, plus or minus 30 minutes or so. Some experts also say up to an hour you can do. So I mean, you can use that little fluctuation on the weekend if you would like. But yeah, about 30 minutes marks is where we want to try to be. Okay. Avoid stimulants close to bedtime. So this includes both caffeine and nicotine. So with caffeine, this essentially typically prolongs our sleep latency, and that is the duration of time between the lights out and when we go to sleep. So when we get into bed and then we fall asleep, that's the time. And that can be increased with caffeine use. It also reduces total sleep time and our sleep efficiency and perceived sleep quality. So it does a lot of things with our sleep. If we are dependent on caffeine, which quite a few people who are coffee drinkers, I would say, are more or less dependent, it is also associated with overall reduced sleep quality and increased daytime dysfunction. So if you need caffeine to function in your day, that is a definite red flag as to you're not sleeping well enough, and potentially you're dependent on caffeine. Remember that caffeine is not just coffee, okay? So caffeine is coffee, tea, chocolate, pop. As I mentioned earlier, my medication had caffeine in it. So caffeine's really in many, many, many different things. Of course, energy drinks as well are caffeine. I didn't mention those, but they are not something that is recommended anyway, but definitely keep that in mind. We want to try to actually be stopping caffeine in the late afternoon. So about 3 to 4 p.m. is when we want to cut it off. So if that's not you and you're still having caffeine in the evening, then we want to start reducing that. And I'm not saying that, stop it entirely because you're going to end up with withdrawal, but slowly reducing it. So let's say your last coffee or you have a chocolate bar or whatever at 9, okay, 9 p.m. Let's start reducing that and go to 8, and then see how you do. Go to 7, see how you do, right? Don't go from 9 to like 3 and go, well, now I'm deprived and angry and I'm going to do it anyway, right? Because we want to adjust slowly, okay? Nicotine as well. When we're dependent on nicotine, and I say nicotine specifically, not just tobacco or cigarettes or anything, because we can smoke it, we can chew it, we can vape it. Nicotine comes in so many forms now. dependence is associated with poor sleep quality and increased use of sleep medication and sleep disturbances. So if you are, using nicotine, something as well to take a look at. If you're using it, you should be using it, same thing as caffeine, stopping in the late afternoon. This is also a good time to potentially look at trying to reduce your nicotine consumption or potentially to quit it. Strengthening the Forces or Health Promotion across Canada has a butt out program, so it is available in each of your wings or bases. So you can definitely chat with your health promotion team and see if they could potentially do something for you and work through that program while this is all going on, and of course when we get back to our offices as well. Okay. So limit alcohol. So you'll see I didn't say don't drink alcohol because I'm aware that you're probably going to drink alcohol, or some of you will, but we do want to use moderation. Moderation is definitely key. So we don't want to look at Canada's lowest drinking guidelines and keep those in mind. Alcohol is a depressant, so it will help you fall asleep. And in fact, quite a few insomniacs actually use alcohol to fall asleep because they can't fall asleep. However, you're not going to get a good quality of sleep. So essentially what happens is that your body starts processing alcohol in the second half of the night, and you're going to wake up a lot more. It also blocks the ability to go into REM sleep. And remember, I mentioned REM is incredibly important for us. So you're not going to be able to go into REM sleep. You're also more likely to actually be getting up a lot more, potentially to use the washroom, because it's, you have to use the washroom a lot more when you drink alcohol. So that's very disruptive. So there's a lot of different ways that alcohol can potentially impact you. Keep in mind as well that alcohol does cause your muscles to relax, including the muscles in your throat. So it's going to increase the risk of you snoring. But for anybody who has sleep apnea, you also increase risks of exacerbating that condition if you're drinking alcohol prior to going to sleep. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're choosing to consume alcohol. And this by no means is me saying just drink alcohol during the day. This is me saying if you're going to drink alcohol, make sure that you're leaving a buffer room of a couple hours before you try to sleep, and stick with those low risk drinking guidelines so you're not over consuming or binging. Okay, so expose yourself to bright light in the morning. Our biological clock essentially loves light and dark. That's how it operates. Our circadian rhythms figure themselves out with light and dark. So it is really, really important to expose yourself to bright light in the morning when we wake up. So essentially, this is going to be trickier in some areas of Canada than others, depending on the season. So for winter, it can be a little difficult because it might be very dark when you first wake up. I still recommend you open the curtains and everything. You may potentially want to look at doing a light therapy lamp if you feel that you're not getting enough sunlight. Talk to your healthcare professional about that. I can't recommend any of them or what brand or anything. I'm not a health professional, and I definitely have not done enough research in that, and there's still research coming out, but that might be an option for you. What I do in the morning is I wake up and I open my curtains. So you'll see it's very bright in my room right now because the curtains are open. I actually don't ever close these curtains because I don't sleep in here. So it's my office. When I'm done, the curtains stay open forever. I also open all the curtains in the rest of my house because if I'm going between different rooms, it's open, it's bright. If you go to work, make sure that you're doing that. If you're working, a lot during the day. So in winter in Cold Lake, I'm very lucky in that I have a window in my office, but I know other people that I work with do not. And when we go to work, it's dark. And when we come out of work, it's dark. So it is really important that, even on breaks, to just kind of go outside if possible and see that bright light, or go to somebody's office that has a window. Just attempt to get that light in there. Make your bedroom conducive to sleep. So how many minutes in the morning should I be exposed to? You know what, Walter, I'm not 100% sure how many minutes specifically. I don't have that research, but I would say, as much as possible, to be honest, because we want to make sure that we're trying to kind of keep it throughout the whole day if possible. But I'd say even like about of like 10 minutes when you first start, or 10-minute little breaks could really help. But I would look into it a bit more, or ask your healthcare professional if you're finding that sleep's really difficult and you're finding that you're not getting really much bright light, how much they would recommend, or if they would recommend a different device like a sleep therapy. Michael, yeah, Comox in winter, always cloudy or raining. It's slightly sunny here right now, but it's pretty cloudy. It's not snowing, so I'm happy it's not snowing. Still have snow on the ground though. All right, so make your bedroom conducive to sleep. So we want to make sure that your bedroom is an environment that you want to sleep in, that signals your brain to say, hey, it's time to sleep, let's do that. So mattress and pillows should be comfortable. So it doesn't mean that you have to go and buy the $200 pillow, right? You can buy a cheaper pillow that is still definitely comfortable and well suited for you, but making sure that it's something that works for you. Life expectancy of a mattress is between 7 to 10 years, depending on, of course, how much you sleep, how you sleep, the mattress quality, the mattress brand, all of those things. But if you've had your mattress for 10 or more years, it might be a time to kind of look into whether you could potentially upgrade that. Keep in mind, if it's not in your finances, that's okay. That could be something that eventually you do in the future. A pillow is a little bit easier to replace price-wise. Normally it says between 18 to 24 months for replacement of those, depending, of course, on, again, brand, quality, all that stuff. But that generally is a little bit easier on the wallet to replace a pillow than a mattress. Bedroom should be cool. So it really varies between about 16 to 21 degrees Celsius, depending on you, okay? And that's also going to depend on if you have a bed partner. So if it's just you, it's going to depend on what you need. If you are sleeping in the bed with somebody else, you guys might have very different ideas of what a good sleep temperature is. I know for myself, my temperature goes down to 17 degrees, but I actually find it a little cool. So I just have an extra blanket on my side to stay a little bit warmer because I prefer that. So the question is, there's a couple questions here. Would a cooler bed be easier to reach REM sleep or a warm one? Really, the cooler bed, so essentially to make sure that your body temperature stays, reasonable, because if you're too hot, you're not going to be sleeping well, which therefore you're not going to go through your sleep cycles appropriately. So we want to make sure we're finding a temperature that just makes us comfortable so that we're not disrupting our sleep, so that we can actually achieve REM sleep and, of course, deep sleep and all of those things. Arun just asked about going back into the artificial or happy light. In winter, does the exposure time vary with individuals? I would say so, yes. It's going to depend, of course, where you're located, but it'll also depend on you. If you're, struggling with seasonal affective disorder, you may need it a lot more than somebody who does not. So that, again, is going to really depend. You're going to have to play around with that a bit. All right, the other one is bright lamps should be turned off or dimmed when possible. So having a lamp in the first place is better than having your overhead lights always on. If you have overhead lights in your room, for us, we have an overhead light, but it's a fan. So we make sure that the fan portion is turned on, but the light portion is turned off, so that when we turn the light switch on, only the fan's coming on and we're just doing our lamps as we kind of get ready for bed. So making sure you have low light, and then, having them turned off when possible. Consider blackout curtains, eye masks, earplugs, white noise machines, all that stuff. So we want to consider things that are going to aid in our sleep environment. So I mentioned that we have a fan. Alberta is also very dry, so we also have a humidifier, because if not, I wake up during the night because my throat gets really dry or my nose gets really dry. So having those types of things to assist you. Blackout curtains, I definitely recommend them if you have difficulty with lights in the room. For us in Alberta, it stays light out till about 10:30 at night in the summer. I bought blackout curtains as soon as I moved here. So we do have blackout curtains. If you're traveling, eye masks are really, really good for on the flight, but also if you're in a hotel room that doesn't have blackout curtains. any types of things like that. You also want to make sure that your room is attractive and comfortable. So if it's a huge mess all the time, you don't really want to be in there. You're not, you're not relaxed in there. So you want it to be comfortable, attractive, and happy, enjoyable. Okay, I'm going to get to the question that you asked, Walter, in just a little bit. I'll go back to that one, okay? All right, exercise regularly throughout the day. So if you don't exercise right now, which we highly recommend that you start. So as little as 10 minutes of aerobic exercise can improve nighttime sleep quality. So you'll see that it's not, you don't necessarily need to have the go to the Canada's guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous to achieve, some more sleep quality. We do recommend, of course, to aim for at least 150, but even just adding those 10 minutes in little bouts here and there can aid in your sleep. Most people should avoid strenuous workouts close to bedtime. This is, of course, very individualized. Some people are not affected by this. Other people are. But really, if you're going to exercise in the evening, you want to probably keep to a light intensity because it can, it elevates your heart rate. It makes you alert. It stimulates you. So if you do a really hard workout and try to go to bed, might not work out so well for you. So you're kind of trying to keep it light if possible. Limit daytime naps. So if anybody in here is a fan of napping, here's some information for you. So I'm not saying you can't nap. I'm saying that if you are going to nap, you need to kind of choose them wisely and choose your duration wisely. So if you're going to nap, it's between 20 to 30 minutes max of duration. Essentially, you want to nap if you are feeling really tired, like you need a nap to feel a bit more alert. You're not going to be able to be productive if you don't have a nap. So 20 to 30 minutes is generally enough for you to wake up, feel refreshed, feel alert, feel able to accomplish your task, okay? If you go past that 20 to 30 minutes, you're getting into territory where you're going to wake up groggy. So Trina actually just mentioned 45 minutes equals sleep drunk. And yeah, if you've ever slept kind of, between the 40 minutes, probably an hour-ish or an hour and 15-minute mark, you probably woke up feeling really groggy. And that's because you've woken up likely in your deep sleep cycle or stage of your cycle. Which is not where we're supposed to be waking up. So your body is going, no, I was comfortable sleeping. Let's go back to that. We don't need to do anything else. And sometimes that's not possible. You have to do other things. So if you wake up after 20, 30 minutes and you're not well rested still, you need to actually just sleep at that point because you potentially a danger to yourself or to others if you're trying to, drive a vehicle or operate machinery or anything. So just kind of keep that in mind. Napping does not make up for adequate nighttime sleep though, because as I mentioned, a nap is 20 to 30 minutes. If you're sleeping for longer, you're just trying to sleep. We want to be sleeping at night. If we're a regular daytime worker, we want to be getting that sleep at night. If you're a shift worker that's working nights, of course, that's going to be reversed, and you're going to need to be doing your sleep during the day, which can be a little bit difficult with that whole bright light thing. So when I have kids, yeah. I know also, if you have infants as well, you might be napping when they nap because you aren't sleeping at night. But, I mean, it is what it is at that point in time. Not going to fault you for that. And you definitely need to be refreshed. So if you need to sleep a little longer, the thing is if you're napping when they're napping, or if you're having a daytime nap, because you're really tired, that's longer than 20, 30 minutes, you want to try to hit at least 90 minutes because that's a full sleep cycle. And then you'll be waking up around when you would in your normal nighttime sleep. Okay. Steer clear of disruptive foods. So, as I said, you don't want to go to bed hungry, but you also don't want to go to bed with a massively full stomach. So don't have, a second dinner before going to bed. Steer clear of foods that are high in fat, very rich, very, very heavy, fried meals, spicy dishes, citrus dishes, all of those things, because they can cause indigestion and heartburn, which of course are not going to help you with sleep at all. if you are hungry, have a snack, because what happens if you go to bed hungry, you're more likely to actually have a disrupted sleep because you'll wake up hungry because your body's going, you didn't feed me and I told you to and you didn't. And then of course, when you wake up in, middle of the night, hungry, you're not going to go grab something healthy. You're going to go grab something that is fatty or sugary or, overall pretty unhealthy. Okay. Develop a relaxing routine before bed. So if you don't have one, this is a great time to look into what could be a relaxing routine for you. So we want to essentially triggers your body to recognize it's bedtime. So once you start doing this routine, your body's like, oh, okay, we're going to bed soon. Perfect. All right. So examples are about reading, reading a book, reading a paper book. Recommended. I don't necessarily recommend using, an e-reader unless you have a blue light filter, and even then, I still don't recommend it a lot because it's still light in your eyes. Taking a warm shower or bath, having some light stretching, doing some yoga, meditating, any of those types of things can kind of trigger your body to go, oh, okay. Maybe your routine is, you start by switching into your PJs, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you grab your glass of water, you go into your bed, you read for 15 minutes, and then you go to sleep, right? Any of those types of things. Try to avoid, of course, emotionally upsetting conversations because they can cause difficulty in sleeping because your mind is racing about it. And avoiding bright light, especially blue light. So exposure to blue light in the evening suppresses melatonin, which is the sleep hormone that allows us to sleep. Okay, so if you're suppressing that, it's more difficult to fall asleep. So blocking blue light emitted from electronic devices has been found to be effective in improving sleep. If you have a phone, you should have a blue light filter on that. I have mine set so that it actually comes on when I think it comes on around 4 or 5 p.m. And it turns off later in the morning. I'm trying to get to it where I can have it on all day, but it slightly annoys me during the day when I'm trying to look at something, but I'm getting there. You can also do blue light filters on your computers. You can get the blue light blocking glasses, which have been found to be really effective for shift workers. But they're meant just for the blue light portion, not to necessarily protect you against cataracts or anything like that. I know there's been some things going out on that. That's not the case. It's for blue light blocking only. Okay. Reserve your bedroom for sleeping and intimacy only. So that means for those of you that have electronics in your rooms, we recommend you don't. So phones shouldn't be in there, TVs shouldn't be in there, computers, work materials. As I mentioned before, this is in my spare bedroom because I am not going to put my work stuff in my bedroom because my bedroom is for sleeping. It's really important to have a fine line because you want to have when you go into your bedroom and you get into bed, you want it to say, hey, this is where I sleep now. This is not where I work. This is not where I watch Netflix. This is not where I scroll social media. If you have to have your phone in there because you use it as an alarm, make sure that it's on Do Not Disturb, it's on the blue light filter, and you've turned it over, okay? And don't touch it because that can really impact your sleep, your association between bed and sleep. And lastly, if you're still having trouble sleeping and you're really unsure, then I would highly recommend speaking to a healthcare professional. As I mentioned, there's quite a few different sleep disorders that are out there that could potentially be impacting you. Sleep apnea is one that is very, very common, especially obstructive sleep apnea. Insomnia, restless leg syndrome, narcolepsy. You can also have hypersomnia where you're sleeping too much. So if you've tried some sleep hygiene stuff, you're not feeling well rested, you're feeling distracted, inattentive, all of those different things. Your mood is really bad. I would definitely be talking to a healthcare practitioner and saying, I want to kind of sleep better, but I don't know how. I've tried these things and they're not working. What can I do? And they'll be able to guide you in the right direction for that. Finally, I just want to go over here and just look at the resources. So these are the resources that are from the Canadian Armed Forces that we're kind of putting out on all of our national webinars. So the Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program is available 24/7 for you. Canada's Suicide Hotline, information on COVID-19, so you can go onto Health Canada and get information about COVID-19. Family Information Line, Sexual Misconduct Response Center, Kids Help Phone, you can either call or you can text them. and the ARC line in support of COVID-19. I do also want to, I will put in the chat here the link. Sleep On It Canada is Canada's sleep campaign, and they actually have a whole section for sleep with COVID-19. So essentially, sleep being your ally during this time. So I do recommend it. Here. So that is the link. For anybody who does shift work, they also have a shift workers course on there. So if you go under tools and resources, they have an online 4-module course that you can go through, learn about how your sleep is, and learn out how to kind of work with that based on you being a shift worker. So I do highly recommend that as well. Okay, so I'm just going to go. It is kind of question time now, so I'm going to go through and see if there was any questions. We are at 12 o'clock, so if you do need to go in anywhere, or 12 o'clock here, if you do need to go anywhere, please feel free. If you have some questions, I will answer those now. Let me see here. So there was a question about vitamin D. As I said, so I'm not a dietitian or am I a healthcare professional, so I can't really say how much vitamin D you should have. Most of us have difficulty getting enough vitamin D in Canada because of our lack of sunlight. So I would say talk to your healthcare practitioner about that, and they would recommend how much that you should be taking. Okay, so the link for the webinar is found after the fact. Yes, so there is a link that will be, like, they're going to be posted. It takes a little bit to get posted up for this, but I will definitely, I'll put them on 4-Wing Connection Facebook. I'm not sure about the other specific groups and stuff, but I'm assuming that PSP nationally would have that available as well. And I haven't taken a look at the CAF Connection page that has the links to the upcoming webinars, but it also may be there as well. Okay. Okay, so Tammy has said, so regarding the webinar recordings, they are looking at a platform to host the library of these recordings. So that will be available, they're just kind of working on that right now. Also, a question was about taking vitamin D and practicing mindfulness, but still really tired. Honestly, at this point, I would recommend that you talk to a healthcare practitioner about that. Look at the other sleep hygiene tips that I put out. There is actually a, I'll find the link right now. There is a sleep hygiene checklist that has been done by Sleepwell in Nova Scotia. So it's essentially it's called mysleepwell.ca, and it does have, sorry, it does have a sleep hygiene checklist. So you can actually fill it out, and then you can print it out and bring it to your practitioner, which is really fantastic. So I will put that here as well. You can also print a blank one and fill it out pen and paper as well if you wanted to. So that is available. And I'm also, last thing I just want to put out here, because in case you want it, I have also added a sleep diary. So the sleep diary is from the National Sleep Foundation. So you can fill that out if you are kind of trying to keep track of your sleep if you're having difficulty. And if there are no other questions, I will end this. I'm going to say thank you for attending. It was great to actually be able to present in this format, and really great engagement from all of you, which was fantastic. So I will see you next time I happen to come on the platform. All right, wonderful. Have a great weekend, and remember to sleep well.